Professor Coomer here. We're talking about the next step in the writing process, and that is audience awareness. Okay? Audience awareness. Why would we want to be aware of our audience? Well, that is very simple. It is for this reason. You need, especially in the first assignment of the semester, we are making an argument. Because no one really cares. Let me just tell you this. No one cares about why you feel the way you feel. Okay? Well, maybe they do. Maybe your friends do. Your mom might. But you're writing this essay not to say, I feel this way. Okay? That's great, and you might write something like this. But in this case, this assignment is asking you to write an essay to argue to another person that your side is the right side. So you want that person or those people to believe you. You're trying to write an argument that is especially convincing to another person. That person may have nothing in common with you. That person may have a lot in common with you. It's your job to understand what makes that person tick. What is that person interested in? What are some points that you can bring up that will make that person believe you, or will move that person to say, you know what, that essay that I read had some good points. Well, let's talk about this. Again, this is going to seem a lot like brainstorming, clustering, or free writing. You may write a paragraph to describe your audience, okay? And that may be something that I assign you, an audience paragraph. Who is your audience? You may brainstorm about who your audience is. Typically, I'm only going to have you do one or the other. I don't usually have clustering in this stage, okay? But let's think about this. If you're making an argument to a person, why do you need to know what makes that person tick? Well, it always comes down to what's in it for me, okay? So, what's in it for me? What is in it for your audience? And in order to know that, you have to know your audience really well. So let's think about the things that we should think about when deciding what's in it for you, okay? Here are some things you may think about. You may not think about all of them. But most likely, if you're going to try to convince something if you're going to try to convince someone of something, say my earlier argument that Vincennes University needs to have a water park. Well, who can make that happen? Who am I speaking to? Well, in this case, I probably am not speaking to the students, okay? And why is that? Why is that? Well, the students probably can't make that decision. You know, my friend Joe or Sarah, they can't really say, you know what, now that you've convinced me that we need to have this water park, we're going to have one. You know, I could decide, well, maybe I'll get a petition and we'll all, stand together and we're going to start this water park. But why are we doing that? We're doing that because we know that there's this other entity, this other person or people that actually makes that decision happen. Those are the people we are trying to reach. So in my case, I'm trying to reach probably, the board or the president of the university, the decision makers, right? For your argument, you may be trying to reach people of your own age. Maybe you're going to reach parents. Would you try to reach both at the same time? Maybe, but most likely no. Most likely, you're just going to reach one group or one person. So for me, I'm going to think about, all right, my target audience, what do they care about and why do they care about it? So let's think. Some of the things that change when we get older is what we care about. So we always have to think about age. Age is something that's going to dictate a lot of what you care about. Right now, you're in college, you care about a lot of things. Later on, whenever you don't have homework, you're not going to think about, well, I've got to get my homework done. You're going to think about, well, I've got to, get to work or pay my bills or take the kids to school. Things change, and when you get older, or in different sections of the age bracket. Whenever I was 6, I cared a lot about ice cream. Now I still care a lot about ice cream, but not the same way I used to. There's a lot of other things that come into play. So we think about age. We may think of other demographics, okay? So income levels. We may think of, Let's see what else. We may think of gender. We may think of ethnicity. We may think of other things like position. For instance, if I am a manager of a place, think about that. What kind of mindset does that put me into? For instance, perhaps I'm the president of the university. So maybe I really love swimming, maybe I really love the idea of a water park, but what else do I have to think about? It's not just me anymore at that point. So what position is the person in? What kind of responsibility does that person have? What kind of responsibility? Am I a mother? Okay, if you're speaking to mothers, you're thinking about, okay, there are responsibilities that they're going to have that a person who is not a mother, who is not a parent, they wouldn't be thinking about those things. So the better you know the situation that your audience is in, the better you're going to convince them of things. Because you're not going to be, for instance, when I was 6 years old, I loved ice cream, right? And that was probably the most important thing in my life. But I'm not going to go to the president of the university and say, we need to build a water park because maybe we can have ice cream there and that would be really awesome. He's not going to be moved by that. Why is that? It's because he's got responsibility. It's because of where his position is. Maybe it's because of his age. Okay? So we have to think about what is going on in the world of our audience. Why would our audience be moved to believe what we have to say? Also, you're going to think all of these things come down to another thing, and that is life experience. Okay? So, you're in college. You're in your first few years of college. When you speak to a person who has been through college, maybe you're talking to me. I've been through college. There's things I'm going to have experiences that you don't already have. The same can be said if you're talking to a person who has never been to college before. Perhaps you're talking to a person that's about to go to college, or maybe they're thinking about going to college. You're going to have more experience than that person. And maybe you can use that experience to your advantage. Maybe you can say, here are a few things you're going to need to know. And because you can look back at your own self, you can look back and say, well, when I was in that stage, when I was at that level of experience, when I was in that position in life, I didn't know everything. Here are some questions that I had, or here are some values that I had. We always have to think about what's going on in the mind of our audience. What do they value? Why would they want to do whatever it is that you want them to do? Why would they change their mind? So, another thing to add to your list is values. What does your audience value? Now, when I'm talking about an audience, I'm not just talking about a single person. Maybe it is a single person. Maybe it's multiple people. We don't know. We don't always know. If you write something down, you don't know if only one person's going to read it, or maybe a dozen people, or maybe 1 million people are going to read it. So you have to really think about, who am I speaking to? When a speaker gets up in front of an audience, maybe a politician or a salesperson, they know who they're speaking to. They know the group that they're trying to move. And they're not going to be talking about things that that group doesn't care about. They're going to be talking about things that that group really does care about. And they're going to say, because of these things, here are some reasons that speak to your concerns. Here are some things that I have to say, and I understand where you are. I know that you care a lot about this particular thing. And let me tell you this. My argument, and the reason why you should follow through and go with my thesis statement, it's because of these reasons. The better you can target your audience, the better you're going to be able to make that argument in a convincing and effective way. So what I'd like you to do is really think about who this audience is. And at first, it may be very difficult. It's very difficult. At first, a lot of people who are untrained in essay writing typically were like, well, it's to everybody. Everybody who reads this will think the same way. I'm sorry, it's not like that. Or maybe you think, well, it's to my teacher. Well, yes, I am going to read your essay, okay? But I'm going to read your essay and I'm going to try to see, is this person speaking to a specific group? It will be obvious. It will be obvious if you're doing it correctly. So, what I want you to do as just a mental exercise after this video is just think, who am I speaking to? What are some things that group of people, or that person or group of people, what are some things that are important? What are some things that, maybe some fears, some values, things that would make that person second guess what I'm trying to say? What's a question that my audience may have for me? Think about it, because the better you know your audience, the easier it is to move them. All right, get started.